SEO's over and you're wanting to find new careers, user behavior and how people shop is changing. They just sell a product. They don't solve anything.
That's a difficult thing to do. To become a market leader, you've got to find a way to be cool.
Do you need those AI workflows to enhance your workflow?
Where someone has created a one-click workflow that does the entire thing.
How do you just make it better for the customers that exist today?
It's going to generate more business for them, and it's a much better way.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Want to attract and convert more leads? Want to learn how digital PR, branding, and SEO can establish and build your brand identity? Welcome to the Market Movers Building Brands and Links with Linkify podcast. We answer these questions and help you ramp up your brand visibility and credibility. Let's cut through the noise and make your business the talk of the town. We're your hosts, Nick and Chris. Let's get this show on the road.
Hello and welcome to the Market Movers podcast. Today we're joined by Kevin Wiles, an e-commerce SEO specialist with extensive experience with brands like Halfords, Les Mills and Air New Zealand. And he's joining us to discuss technical SEO and Shopify optimization. Welcome to the show, Kev.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Kevin, it's great to have you on. I think to start, why don't we talk about the current sentiment in the e-com, Shopify space, D2C space, as it concerns, Google and search?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's probably two parts to that. I think in the SEO space specifically, and within that, probably more specifically SEO Twitter and SEO LinkedIn, I think it's
doomsday.
It's literally doomsday. The world's coming to the end. Google's killing SEO, and brands aren't going to need SEO in 10 years, etc. That's happened every year, right? Every year there's been something that everyone latches onto, and they're like, SEO's over, and you're wanting to find new careers. I think specifically just on Shopify and e-commerce, I think just user behavior and how people shop is changing so drastically. If you look at now, I've got friends that predominantly just buy through TikTok Shop. They'd will go spend hours doom scrolling and just buy a load of random stuff, and they're like, cool, it's going to fit my house. But also the old school 10 blue links in search with a bit of paid media above it has sort of massively changed. It's been advancing over the last 10 years, but now it's becoming more you've got rich results, you've got product cards, you've got more intent driven local results, you've got the mass adoption of AI overviews that are pushing everything below. So I think it's going to be interesting. I still have in the back of my mind that Shopify eventually will come out with some sort of platform for shopping behavior. Think of it as an Amazon, but for Shopify retail sellers, where they just basically say, hey, similar to how WordPress owns 80% of the web in terms of informational sites, they go, most of the big retailers and most of the brands in the D2C space are on Shopify. Why don't we just create a marketplace for those people and then essentially dominate it even further? But maybe that's a far-fetched idea, but I definitely think everything's up for grabs at the moment as well. Google's obviously having a rough time in certain areas, which I think makes it more interesting for brands like TikTok and how they get into search and stuff.
Have you been looking through my house? Because I have recently gone down the TikTok doom scroll, and I've got loads of cheap, crap Chinese stuff in my house now, which I've had for about 3 weeks, and it's all started to break.
I think everyone's started to do it, right? It's also that part of I did it for ages. So also I'm a super early morning person in the gym. So we're talking 3, 4 a.m. So I've always been a pre-workout addict. I'm 2 scoops, get to the gym super early. But for ages I did the same thing, whereas a new pre-workout brand would come out on Instagram and I'm cool, I'll just buy a tub of that. So it's and for ages I basically had a cupboard of just one tubs that I had one scoop out. I'm I should probably just research better and just buy one product rather than just instant purchase on those social platforms. So I feel your pain.
I think that's a real good insight, though. I think considered purchases, I definitely lean way more towards Google, and it's so impulse, the sort of fast scrolling social media. So I think for now, there is still definitely a place for Google. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I still think, don't get me wrong, tools like ChatGPT and stuff are getting better, specifically if you're really wanting a niche product recommendations. I don't know, let's say you're 6'4", you've got a really long inline leg, for example, and you've got some specific requirements. You're there's so many brands out there. Your journey might be cool, I'm 6'4", I go to the gym, I've got semi-okay quads, this is that my problem. Tell me the brands that do clothing that fits that sort of criteria. That's where I see it quite useful, because it you can then go onto Google and find those through product grids and stuff. But I still think Google's got the largest monopoly of the market and stuff. I think the other part is just the younger generation, their behaviors are going to drastically change, because they're not going to be brought up with the traditional search engines, right? They're from day one, their behavior and stuff is going to be from social apps and platforms. So in 10 years, that behavior will completely pivot, because hey, those people are just getting older. And then like our generation will just be like, cool, I'm old now, I'll just read a traditional newspaper and sit in my chair and relax for a little bit. But yeah, I definitely, I think it's, Google is still the monopoly of search at the moment and stuff.
Then how should brands be thinking about that? I mean, I know this is going to depend a lot upon the industry. If you're in fashion, fitness, maybe TikTok, you should definitely be looking at that. But overall, how should you be thinking about it? And how do you start to test these different platforms?
It's a good question. I think for me, it still starts with the same stuff. Like, who is your genuine audience and like, what's the problem your product solves? Like, there's brands I've worked with the last 12 months, like they're cool brands, but like they just sell a product. They don't solve anything. They just have a cool product and it's like, yeah, but what's your USP? And I think once you understand that, you can start to really understand like where that audience actually is spending time. So like, we're seeing a resurgence in forums and little communities, like Reddit obviously is integrated to search now, but I think that then allows you to start saying, cool, within that, like what's the problem they want solving? So like I had a garden client recently that invested loads and loads of effort and time building out static content. And it sounded really obvious, but I was like, no one is reading like an article about how to grow rhubarb in that 2,000 word article. Like they're just not. They want like a small TikTok reel or something that's like, cool, do this, that they can then take to the greenhouse and follow straight away. But doing that research up front allows you to understand the types of platforms and then the types of like content you need. And then the SEO hat comes on and goes, cool, like what's that SERP have within it? Is it imagery? Is it, people also ask, is it videos? Is it like owned by forums? Is it informational content? Is it categories, etc.? And then cluster that. You can use obviously tools like Keyword Insights to cluster at scale, but just test and refine things. I think the other part of this is there are some instances when if you just look at some of the brands, the biggest growth they've had is just by doing things that aren't SEO related. What I mean by that is like, hey, some of the coolest brands I know that have seen good growth from like a brand perspective, which has then helped them get links pretty much easily. They've just been out there on social, right? Like, do you remember the days when Paddy Power used to like go and block ports and do like stunts and stuff that had nothing really to do with SEO? But as a byproduct, those campaigns got brand awareness and they got links because people were like, hey, have you seen what they've done? Have you seen this? I think that's the other part is like doing those non-SEO type things on platforms like TikTok and owning that space naturally do have an impact on traditional search.
So we can no longer rely on just working the algorithm, getting organic traffic and selling our product. We have to differentiate and brand build. And that is a difficult thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's, if you look at, I remember when I first started, I was like, cool, I think it's going to be about like the search is about like authority brands and that's through like traditional link building stuff. I think like as SEOs, we ruin every tactic, right? Like we generally kill every tactic. Google comes out and says, no, that's now like against guidelines. And then there's a new tactic and so it's just a vicious circle. But like, I do think now, because of how vast platforms are and how easy it is to spin up brands and affiliate sites and all that sort of stuff, I think now people, like customers specifically, like, which are the brands I can actually trust? Chris, to your point, like you went and bought all that stuff off TikTok, it's now started to break. So all those brands that probably sold that product are like, I'm not going to go and spend more money with that person because like it's a bad product. And I think we're starting to see that come back into the fold. Like some of the brands, specifically in the US that I work with, they now like, their brand name plus reviews now has like quite large amounts of search from like, hey, that must be from, well, obviously it's from people searching for it, right? But like Halfords didn't have that much demand for people searching for like Halfords reviews because I just don't think people cared at that point. Whereas now I think it's like, it's considered purchase, right? People are like, cash is tighter. People are like, cool, I want to make sure the product's good quality, the brand's great, like customer service is good depending on what the product is. So I do think you then have to brand build. And then when you build a cool brand, competitors can't easily steal that traffic if you're getting more demand than them. But you create something that's useful. Like Gymshark, for example, like, yeah, they used influencers at the beginning, but like then they've gone really deep into like, how do we build a community for people that essentially don't feel that comfortable going to the gym, right? I appreciate you still have the traditional, like the people that are like super, super ripped and do competitions, but a lot of their other athletes and stuff are now like in different areas, right? And that they're doing that to be like, cool, look at female people who might not feel confident going to like a classic meathead gym. How do you change that narrative? And then as a byproduct, they sell more clothing because people like, I buy into them as a brand.
So as brands like focus on that branding element, building up the reputation, what's the role of the SEO department for that? Do they play an active role in that? Or are they like sitting back and, trying to get the unlinked mentions converted into links as they roll in?
Yeah, I think I actually had this conversation yesterday, and I honestly think that like there is still probably a massive gap between internal PR or traditional PR agencies that work for brands and SEOs collaborating way more. And of course, if you're an in-house and you're using separate agencies, those agencies always have the balance of like, well, we're not going to talk to that agency because like they stole the SEO contract or vice versa. But I do think that like SEOs can usually come up with cool ways that data could be utilized to expand the reach of the PR stuff, either through like, if you're doing a data campaign through PR, the SEO might go, cool, actually what I've realized, I don't know, Halfords did it, for example. We had a roadworthy quiz that went out every year that looked at statistics of MOT failures and crime rates for like people driving with like dirty number plates or broken tail lights. We broke that down by regions. And then as the PR went out to their local press people, we said, hey, all these council websites have these pages and these statistics. Why don't we outreach to them? So I think if you can get them to collaborate, SEO should be involved and can help from the beginning. Caveat, like that depends on what type of SEO you are, right? Like I think I'm quite a unique person, but I've got like quite a creative personality. So I think by default, I try and look at like that idea could be maximized by doing these things. Whereas a traditional tech person who just wants to sit with headphones and understand code may not have that same view to be like, you take that idea and you can maximize it doing this.
I think topic matching too, like, the PRs, like if you can give them that attention, like, hey, this is a page we really want to focus on. This is a product, a category, whatever. Let's focus on these kind of topics. Could be an important role for SEOs as well.
Yeah. And that's when, and then not only off the back of that, but like if let's say you're doing a campaign about air fryers, and I'm going to use this because I was using my air fryer this morning, but like, it's like then cool, like what are all the related search terms that people are searching off the back of that you could just try and own that topic collectively? Like the traditional, like we're doing a campaign on air fryers versus oven sales, for example, in PR. Cool. What are now all the search terms that go with that from an online point of view that you could try and own that content, which makes your website then a destination? So it's like the default would be like recipes, right? Or air fryer hacks and that sort of stuff. Because people love, like particularly that example, you don't have to go on like Instagram. There's like people like, oh, I made a roast dinner in my air fryer. And I'm like, firstly, that's disgusting, but still a cool hack, right? And then, people making cakes and all that sort of stuff. Those aren't going to be traditional examples of how those air fryer manufacturers expected that product to be used.
I think as well, another really interesting point that you've said a couple of times is brands being cool. And that's a difficult thing to do. But for example, the air fryer example, there's a brand, I think it's called Fry Ninja or whatever. They've collaborated with Iceland. Iceland's done a load of collaborations with like TGI Fridays and other like big food manufacturers, and then it becomes like they're the sort of brand that you think of when you think of air frying, which is going to drive branded search in Google and just send all those positive signals. So to become a market leader, you've got to like find a way to be cool, haven't you?
Yeah, you've got to cut through the noise. It's like, is it Cuthbert, the Caterpillar like jail thing they did last year with Audi or Lidl? That was like sensational, right? Like they've taken a product, they're known for copying people, but then they've like really lent into it and gone really, really deep and been like, cool, we could just make a big thing about this, become that cool brand that like younger people potentially aren't coming into into Audi and Lidl. And that happens. I think we're seeing that shift across everything. Like there was once a stage where people like Kia is an uncool car brand. I would never be seen dead in a Kia, where you're now seeing that shift from people who used to state that and now like, actually it's a pretty cool brand because of the positioning they've done. And I think that's some of the better things, right? If you can get it past like corporate comms and legal and compliance and stuff and do something that's useful, you can make that cut through and actually have a stake in the ground as a cool brand.
Kia, that's 100% true for Kia. I remember when I was buying my first car and they were cheap, they looked junky. Now they're expensive, they look pretty awesome. So they've really leveled up.
Yeah. And that happens, like Skoda did the same thing. And the other side is like, as Skoda and Kia have got more expensive, so has Audi and stuff, right? And then the base level of an Audi, people are like, well, I can get the all singing, all dancing Kia, and it comes with 100,000 mile warranty. So it's like, it's a no-brainer now. But that happens across everything. Supermarkets do it. The clothing, I think in some of the smaller brands, I think as well, people buy from like the sort of like owners, right? Like there's a clothing brand that I started to follow like a couple of years ago. And I just followed him because he was on a cool journey. He was working in e-com, basically was like telling the story about how he'd left his job. But now he like shares a sort of like life in the day of this entrepreneur sort of thing. You're invested to him as a person, but then instantly you go and buy products from him because you're like, oh, he's got cool clothing as well. But bigger brands don't do that. Like it's not like the Halfords CEO doesn't come out and be like life in the day of the Halfords CEO, because like it's probably not as exciting as a new founder in a D2C brand. Yeah, like it's probably more just dealing with like legal cases and big deals to get new products and ranges and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's take all of that into account. And we are now living in an age of AI, but above and beyond, like, Google surfacing AI generative results, but brands can actually utilize AI workflows, automations or whatnot. So which brands are going to succeed and how are they going to utilize AI in any capacity in order to like be ahead of the competition and be around for decades to come?
I think those brands that you hit the nail on the head that are using AI to enhance their workflow rather than it being the workflow. And what I mean by that is like last year, obviously we saw a mass influx of like brands just being like, I don't need copywriters, I don't need SEOs because I can just go ChatGPT, create an article of this. And it's like, cool, my job's done, easy. Those brands I think are the ones that are going to fail because like there's no fact checking in that stuff, right? It's just create this prompt, do that. That data could be shared with like other people if you believe that sort of stuff. I think the ones that will win will be really trying to understand and invest in the people that can help them build efficiencies in that process. So if you're an e-com brand, how can you possibly take a sort of like AI workflow that pulls in like the original IBAN number, for example, and then scrapes all the relevant information from that IBAN specifically, so like far deeper than what keyword research tools will give you, allowing you to really go deep of like, you know, if it's a makeup product, what's the specific ingredient, what does it treat more than what that supplier might have just put, like it treats sensitive skin, for example. And then coupling that to say, right, this is how you build that product page. This is the type of content you need. This is like the deep understanding and research you need. Those are the types of like workflows I think are going to enhance things. But there's also macro level stuff, right? Like how do you integrate Google Search Console data to then provide recommendations to tweak and enhance content over time rather than just put that article live 3 months later, we'll do a content audit and then we'll say, right, now it needs to be amended. But again, it's like, do you need those AI workflows to enhance your workflow and deliverables you can give to a client? I.e., if you go and look at 70% of the Shopify sites I've looked at in the last month still have basic fundamentals of SEO that aren't done. And while that AI stuff is really cool and your clients do ask about generative AI overviews, it's like, you still have to build the solid foundations for that stuff to enhance what you're already doing. And if you haven't got that stuff, or you've got like a site with 1 million pages, but only 300,000 are good, that probably is the issue you need to fix, not how do we use AI to create vast amounts of content and bloat the site even further. So I think it's a balance. Yes, I'm behind AI, and yes, I think it's going to advance things. But I think too many brands right now are like, let's do all this cool stuff with AI. And then it's like, you've got no authority, you've got no brand recognition, you've got like mountains of technical debt. The AI is like the icing on the cake. It doesn't fix the crux problem, right? It's like the classic in link building. It's like we built 1,000 links from like an Indian outreach agency that emailed us last week. It's like, oh, it's not going to have any impact. And now we're going to have to spend ages cleaning all those up. But it's because like people just deemed that was how you did SEO. And I think we as SEOs we've made that narrative for people, right? We over time has essentially made out that SEO is a black art or black magic, and like it's really complex. You need to understand all this sort of stuff, and then it's made it harder for non-SEOs to understand what it is that you actually do to move the needle. Which then, when you're like, oh, we're going to do some blog content each month, they're just like, well, ChatGPT can do that, so why do I need you? And they don't understand the research that goes into it, like the competitor analysis that goes into making it the best piece of content. Like if it's in like medical, the EEAT stuff that you need to adhere to and all that sort of stuff. They're just like, oh, I've made an article. You're like, cool, where do you do it? Oh, ChatGPT. You're like, okay, probably not going to work, but cool.
Yeah. To be fair, I think a lot of this is a problem of just looking at it, even way before AI. We need to rank and bring in the visitors. Here's the strategy, and it's very generic strategies. And before ChatGPT, it was outsourced to a writer who didn't understand the brand either. So I feel like they're not downgrading their style. They're probably saving money, but it's still not a great long-term strategy. It's what gets a lot of attention. You know, you see all these videos on YouTube or things I post on LinkedIn where someone has created a one-click workflow that does the entire thing and uploads it to WordPress or Shopify and publishes it for you. And that's getting all the attention. But we were talking about, a brand in the UK, I think that was using AI very differently. So I think those things are getting all the attention, but there are brands out there that are using it differently. And those are really going to have a competitive advantage. Can you tell the story about the window company that we were talking about before?
Yeah, for sure. So they've approached it slightly like they're not. Yes, they are going to do SEO and stuff, but they've used AI to basically take an industry that is like really archaic, right? Like they've said, hey, younger families and like the younger generations are a bit sort of like weirded out the fact some random guy or woman will knock your door and be like, do you want some windows? And then if you say yes, they come and sit on your sofa with a massive brochure, right? It's the same with like carpet design and stuff. So they've basically taken that and said, like, times are changing and people don't want that intrusiveness, right? They want to have the ability to sort of like shop online, but in a way that they know what they're going to get is going to fit the window regs to the right standard and building quality. So they basically built an app that's due to launch in the next week or so, how to basically remove that process essentially, like essentially take the pressurized sales out of windows. And you basically take photos of the outside of your house of all the windows you want to replace, take like a forefront of the house, and then it will basically, using AI and stuff, it will basically scope all the window frame sizes, all the types of windows you've got, all the insets and stuff. And then shopping experience from that point is on you as the user, right? You can go through the journey of like, what handles do you want? What color do you want the window? Are you going to get it fitted, or do you want to like, is it supply and fit or just supply? And it's a simple thing like that where it's like AI can solve that problem. And yes, it doesn't seem like a problem, but if you actually look into like reviews of like some of the big window retailers, a lot of people are like, either the sales teams were, here's the dream, it's going to be amazing, and then when they fit it, it's like still not packed right, it's not like sealed in properly, it's not like, it just looks horrible. And that's where AI I think is going to enhance a lot of those industries. Like it maybe isn't revolutionary, and it's not like, oh, this is amazing, but it's like that industry hasn't changed in like 30 years. So it's like, how do you just make it better for the customers that exist today? It's going to be a cool project because over time they're going to add more like features and stuff, but that's essentially just using AI to say, look, we can take this, we understand the measurements, this is how visually it's now going to look. So you can get a view of, similar to what ASOS do with their clone, but you can visualize what that is before you actually purchase it. So like, yes, a couple of years ago, people just had white UPVC windows, but now there's different styles. Like there's 1,000,001 color palettes you can have on windows for the style of your home and stuff. And again, I think people want personality in their house. Before it used to be the interior because it was so expensive to do anything on the exterior. This is trying to take that and go, it's actually not, and it's not that complex to do that part without some randomer sat on your house with a cup of tea.
I think as well, it's going to get to a point where that you need to have that sort of ability within your business. So we've interviewed a few like large clothing brands that have implemented very, very aggressive like AI look the fashion sort of features. So rather than just seeing that garment on like one single body type, they've really gone all out on allowing you to select AI models from every shape, size, height, everything you can imagine, which just gives the customer that ability to sit back, relax, and like engage with the brand and the product. Like with the windows, like let's say I'm on the fence about windows, okay? I'm thinking maybe I need some new windows, right? I definitely don't want to let some guy come into my house if they knock the door. I don't trust them straight away. I'm going to be busy, no way. You don't want to ring up and ring someone, get them to book to come do a quote. You then feel sort of obligated to placate them when they're in your house, like you've called them, blah, 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 blah. Whereas I can just get on my phone, I can have a play. Like it's going to generate more business for them. And it's a much better way to do that sort of business, isn't it?
Yeah, and I definitely think it is. And there's like, I think younger people just don't want to be forced sold to, right? I think like, if I look at my parents, they definitely will still be like, parents are nearly like 70, but they're definitely still the sort of people that were like, we want someone to come around with all the carpet samples and show us all that, and we can touch and feel it and stuff, right? And look at all the colors. But like, that's my idea of how. I'm like, I just want a carpet. I need like, it's got this much wear and tear. I want it in this color. I don't need some guy to then sit in my house for 2 hours that I don't have 2 hours to spare. But now I'm like, to your point, Chris, you've now got off them tea, and then like, you feel like you've got to buy biscuits. Like, it's just like a terrible journey. I'm like, trying to be on my phone, be like, cool. Those ones are like, yeah, I like that design. Not sure about this. Get feedback from the partner, and then purchase it online and find a reputable installer. I think as well, that's like Dunham. I think it was Dunham did a similar thing like beginning of last year, where they realized that people really don't have, unless you're like an interior designer, you've got some good idea of like style and stuff. People don't really know how they should style a room, like how should they paint it and stuff. I think that's why people love going to IKEA, right? They can see the room completely set out as like, this is what it could look like if you do all this stuff, and you can then visualize that in your home. My office being a terrible example of the dead planet in the background, but I think that's why Dunham like worked, because people could start to go, oh, I can visualize that full room concept in my home. I'm just going to add everything to the basket, and therefore the AOV is far bigger now than it just is a corner TV unit. It's the thing with outfits, like you could buy a pair of trousers and you're like, not sure what that would pair with for this wedding I'm going to. ASOS then now can give you the shop the look sort of thing, and it's a good way to just increase behavior. I remember the site that closed down like a couple of years ago called Thread, and it was basically like a menswear site that you basically went on, told them all like the criteria about like who you are, your body type, what you need outfits for and stuff, and they essentially did like a personal shopping experience that was manual. So like someone actually then emailed you all these suggestions. I think they got purchased by a bigger brand, but like that sort of stuff where it's like, here's all my criteria stuff. Tell me what outfit should I have. That's why I also think ChatGPT is going to help, right? I could go in and go, I've got a summer wedding in Croatia. It's going to be this temperature. What sort of outfit should I wear? The bride's wearing pink, for example. Give me something that won't like conflict with that color thing. And then it will give you suggestions. And then the next prompt might be like, now tell me retailers I could go and buy that. And then you jump onto Google or like Facebook or Instagram, whatever, and then find those brands. That's how it can help people, right? Like I'm terrible at fashion. So whenever I need something for like, that isn't just hiking gear, I'm like, cool, someone needs to tell me what I need to go and buy.
I think there's so much room for, I think, almost every industry to use that sort of personalization. So sticking with the windows, like when we remodeled our house in the States, we had to call all those companies. Thank God no one came to our door because that's awful. But we called them and it wasn't much better. They come out, they're all full of shit. It's just, they're like, oh, you don't want to talk about the other company. They're horrible. You get fingerprints on the inside, like all this stuff, right? And if there was one company that had a process that was just like, hey, take a picture with your phone. We'll get the measurements from AI. Here's the quote. I would have gone with that in a heartbeat because I wouldn't have felt like, pressure sold to. When someone comes out, they always try and upsell you too. They're like, okay, they get you in on like, oh, this is the price. It's very affordable. And they're like, but those windows they're kind of shit. Like if you want the good ones where you're not going to freeze to death, it's actually going to be this price. So I think there's a lot of room for brands to embrace that, be the first ones and really build like their name on that.
Yeah, agree. And I think it's then paired with like, Chris, I think you mentioned it earlier. It's like that's only then half the problem, right? Because at that point, while you've provided the solution for them to that shopping problem, you still need to build the trust part, which is then like, cool. If let's say you're the Windows supplier, it's like, cool. What are all the pieces of content and problems that typically would lead someone to buy Windows or want to go and look at like, I know I've got water with the inside panes or whatever. Then it's like, cool. You need to now go and own all of that content, and that probably is going to be like informational content or video, and if it's video, it's YouTube and TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and then you need a videographer to film that, and you need SEO insights to feed into it. But you need to build that trust so that when people are actually looking at buying it through that app, they have trust that what they're getting is like from someone who actually knows what they're doing, rather than just like some guy that's been like, I've built this cool app, doesn't have an understanding of the building industry, doesn't have an understanding of the regs and stuff. So I think that's the other part, is like you then need to flip back to SEO, build brand awareness, and create that content.
And as well, I think it actually stems back to the basics. So we had Dave Harlan on recently, who's like an expert copywriter, and he talks about the Caterpillar little thing and how they were able to position that on social just with their choice of like wording and the humorous approach that they took as like part of their brand like visibility. And that is absolutely copied across the content on their website all the way through to all of the social media, and how their forward-facing brand is positioned in a way that they communicate and engage with customers. So it almost needs to go back to that basic point. So for example, window sales, known for being super pushy. This new company that you're invested in, they're using AI. They can be the cool window guys because they don't push, take a picture, have a look, chill out. It's up to you. Like that's going to be, and then if they are able to get that into their copy on their website, in all of their ads and marketing stuff, then you can see how that can quickly become hyper effective, can't you?
Yeah, because you've got the differential, right? You're no longer just a website that has category pages, product pages, and blog content. You're the brand that's like offered a differentiator in the market and trying to be helpful to that person. And I think you'll see that across lots and lots of things. Like for some unknown reason, I got targeted on Instagram the other day with an app that will allow you to take a picture of a plant and then tell you the problem with that plant. Like, is it overwatered, underwatered? Has it got like a leaf disease or whatever?
You've not used it.
Yeah, I've clearly not.
I said hopeless, it's dead.
I completely forgot to water it when I went to Dubai, so it's literally been like 3 weeks with no water. But that's the sort of stuff that then, if I'm a garden retailer and I've built that app, I'm then solving the problem that's either going to lead to one thing: an increase in sales in like fertilizer and those sorts of products, or an increase in sales of what I need to do, which is like go and buy new houseplants because, hey, that plant is dead. It's, it's died, it's dead, it's got disease, whatever. But again, you've helped them understand what that is, because 90% of people who have plants probably just go, the soil feels dry, let's put some water in it, without actually understanding like what climate does it need? Why does it need less water than others and stuff? And that's generally where I think AI and those adaptions are going to become really cool, where it's like they actually solve a problem and a need.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think there's a lot of really incredible use cases. There's a couple more things I want to ask on, specifically on the Google front. One, voice search. A lot of people think that's going to really disrupt the industry. It's going to change the way people search. Do you think that's going to be a big change or a big impact for Shopify brands? Or do you think it already is, maybe?
Maybe I'm wrong in this, but like I think voice search has been like the new SEO buzzword for like the last 4 or 5 years. I do think voice search is going to change how people search. And like, again, it's like a user thing, right? Like I don't care anymore, but like I'll go out and I'll voice note people on my WhatsApp, like when I'm in public around other people, and just be like, that's easier than typing. But I also think people are now doing that, particularly when in a younger audience, where they're just like, hey, I'm in this store, I like this product, yada, yada, yada. I think that will increase. I also think people being in their home will increase, of just like inherently as humans, we're getting lazier, and therefore it's easier to speak into the computer or a mic or your phone and go, I want this, and I want, hey Alexa, turn on the lights or whatever. I think that's where we'll start to see it increase in like the research phase. But again, like apart from the Alexa usage where it's like, okay, Alexa, reorder Nespresso pods, I don't see it making this like huge fundamental shift to how we've seen it for the last couple of years. I think there's too much. The changes are coming from, I think, the younger audience rather than like people of my age, potentially. And I think because of that, a lot of them are like searching on TikTok and stuff, which is why I think you're seeing like this review of like TikTok search is becoming a thing. While it is a social platform, I do think that's because like maybe not right now, but the adoption rate and stuff will be people going on to TikTok, searching for specific products or recommendations or recipes, and then buying it either through TikTok or through search as a second point, not first.
Interesting. I think that's a good point that you said. It's been talked about for a few years now, isn't it? Like voice search is going to change, be optimized for voice search. But I don't think the two sort of have married quite well yet. There's not like a good search experience, is there? Because it needs to be visual as well. Like you don't want to ask Alexa, like, hey, can you? Oh, she might answer me now. You don't want to ask them something and then like not see anything. So I don't think it's quite got there yet. But yeah, it would be interesting to see where that does develop, because it is a hell of a lot easier just speaking. I mean, I use it all the time in terms of if I'm going to put content together, I'll do like a Loom video or I'll speak into a voice note and then get AI to rewrite it, rework it. So it just speeds up workflow in that regards, WhatsApp voice notes and stuff. But as a direct search experience, interface, visual, sort of it all being connected, it's not quite there, is it?
No, I think that's because it's like it still tries to do like voice to voice without the visual part. Where to your point, it's like if I speak into the mic and I'm like, cool, okay, Google, show me the best men's shoes to wear for a wedding in summer of 2025 for this style. It's going to send a list back rather than like here's actual visual images like you get in traditional search. And you're right, there's no like that's not married up perfectly right now. In some instances, you get all right results, but it's still not perfect at sort of like understanding, I guess, the intent to a degree of like, is that a visual search they're asking for? And if it's a visual search, how do you actually relay that information back? But I do it now. Like I've got a DJI like mini mic thing. And like typically when I'm in the car, for example, have it clipped to the seatbelt and I can just talk to people, like record myself doing things for like work and stuff, get back, download it, a video to text, then get ChatGPT to speed it up. And then either I've got like my to-do list for the week if I'm traveling on a weekend, for example. I would never have done that ages ago because I'm like, well, I'd be too worried to get my like caught on the motorway with my phone in my hand and then get points on my license. So I do think it's changing, but I think you're right. It's just not perfect right now. And I think it still needs some adaptations.
I think there'll be a bigger impact for local businesses. I can't remember if it was Apple Intelligence or Gemini, but I saw some ad where the guy was, asking it like, find a coffee shop with good reviews near me. So it's just in some situations, I think, it could be definitely for the younger generation, but definitely could be impactful in what it finds versus you opening your phone, going to maps, searching coffee shops, looking at the reviews, and then figuring out which one is closest to you. But yeah, on the e-commerce side, maybe not quite there yet.
Yeah, agree. And I think I always feel like search moves like one big step forward and then like 4 steps back to some regard, where like they test things and then they're not sure, so they undo it or they modify it and then it changes the rules of the game and stuff. But unfortunately, I think as SEOs, we're like, as soon as there's something that we're not fully okay with or we don't fully understand, like SEO's dead. Probably not. It's just adapting, and we need to overcome that adaptation stuff. I was listening to like a sort of podcast from the team at SEO, and they were talking about like sort of like the agencies that probably won't survive are those ones that just aren't adapting to actually how search behavior has changed, and just sort of like flat out just like SEO is page titles and meta descriptions without actually understanding like actually if you're in Google, are you in Google Images, Google News, Google Shopping, the video tab, like where are you starting your journey, and then does that content match that stuff? But who knows? It's always fun to get involved in those things, right?
And as well, I think it's interesting to your point earlier that there's many brands, e-commerce platforms, websites that are still killing it in Google, like traffic all the way up for years still. But they've got the basics like correct, haven't they? Like
Yeah.
If you look at IKEA, for example, it's like it's a phenomenal online shopping experience. It's not like you don't enter into a crazy AI world that's like voice activated and your brain enters the laptop. They're not doing anything mental. It's just really well done SEO, which is designed for a good customer journey, good customer experience, and to maximize their sales as well. Like they're crushing it in that regard. So I think, basics first before we start running away with ourselves.
I was just gonna say, like, there's another guy I follow on YouTube in terms of like, it talks about like Shopify SEO a little bit and stuff. But like, he made a good point. It's like, a lot of the SEO models and agency models are built around, okay, for month 2 and beyond, you're going to get 8 blogs and you're going to get like us to do link building and stuff. But it's like, actually, do you even need blogs? Like, should you just go really, really deep in the product and collection research and like do the commercial stuff first that we know as of today isn't as impacted from generative AI reviews, and then build links and then worry about the content? But I think it's just like in a lot of spaces, we've tried to formulate a rigid list of tasks we have to do as SEOs without any understanding of like the flexibility of like, does that brand actually need it? Or are we just saying they do it because that's the agency model we've built?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's just a complete shift is needed in what your priorities are. Like if you're going to outsource, you need to either like not outsource your entire operation to an agency, or you need to have a like very clear understanding of what it is you want. Because those outdated SEO packages are worthless. But you did mention links, which is our favorite topic as we do digital PR. So let's just start there. Like, do you think links are still important for ranking in Google for Shopify?
Yes. Yeah.
If you said no, we were going to stop this interview.
I'm kidding. On Twitter and LinkedIn now, but like I generally still think like links have a place for driving authority. Right? There's enough case studies out there from enough people that like are deep in the testing of Google and what they're now ranking in their algorithm stuff to prove and show that links are still a factor in how Google determines where like page and stuff should rank. But I also think from the flip side, it's like, don't get me wrong, I think those links are only useful if they're relevant and have good places for the brand and stuff. But that comes back to that brand conversation, which is like, can you do something good for link building that has a multiple impact of like good brand awareness, good strong links that are relevant to the category that helps commercial pages rank? I still don't know. There's millions of people way smarter than me in SEO, and I still don't think they've come out and like worked out how Google potentially could move completely away from links as that impacting factor. So yeah, I still think or know that they still have an impact on search.
And what's your favorite link building strategy outside of digital PR for e-commerce brands then?
So for me, I try and think of stuff that like isn't the norm of just like, like sending products to a sort of blogger and getting a link on their blog. I think for me, I try and always work out like, can you build a tool or do something cool with data that is just a bit more like, I generally try and approach link building of like, is it going to impact the brand? And do they like, can it impact brand demand and searches and behavior for that brand? And it'll be things like, the data stuff is pretty cool because journalists love data. I feel like I'm telling you guys stuff that you're like, obviously, mate, that's what we do. Like, tell us something we don't know. But I definitely think like the data stuff works well. I think a lot of the time, those old school link tactics still work, right? Like, if you're in a local area and trying to influence stuff, could you go and get a chamber of commerce link, right? And you're a small business, that still has an impact. It's still relevant stuff. But yeah, usually data, and there's enough open source data platforms out there today that you can go and get that stuff to build a cool campaign. But again, it's like, if you're not sure on ideas and you've got the data, you can always run those queries through something like AI to be like, how would you position this data to do this to get you inspired? Because I think a lot of people are like, data engineers aren't potentially the most creative people. So like their point is like, here's the data, but then they don't know how they could execute that to make it super creative. But yeah, data and stuff, data and tools.
Like the Halfords campaign.
There's been a debate lately about, is it more important to get a link on an aged URL or a brand new one, a fresh URL? I feel like a few years ago, like that's what everyone wanted. They wanted a link from a very aged URL that had some backlinks coming in, hopefully some traffic. Now there's been more of a push for, like newer stuff. I think that came out of the Google leak. Where do you stand on that?
A bit of both. Like, don't get me wrong, like a nice aged domain link, good, right? Like every SEO knows it's still going to have an impact. But like, I think as SEOs, you have to have sort of like a more open-minded view of what happens if I don't know, I'm an AI company and therefore I want a load of links from like AI related sites and like regulatory boards and AI. All of those sites realistically are going to be pretty new, right? Like when you look at it and it's like, cool, would you turn around and say, I don't want those links because they're new sites, even though they're super, super topical and super, super relevant? I think you need that balance, right? Like sure, net new domains that like have no content aren't going to be perfect, but it's never just like anything in SEO. It's never just new or old. It's like new, but does it have good content? Have they covered that topic exhaustively? Is it relevant to you? Does it look like that content's AI driven? Then therefore it's not going to be an impact. And then what's their backlink profile, right? Have they done something dodgy that might have a knock-on effect for you? I'd still take links from a new site if it was relevant and you knew it was going to grow over time. It was just like, hey, they've got a business idea that's just taking off and it needs time to build and they need to build brand awareness themselves.
That's a great point. Healthy mix, and also those links which have the potential to become and drive power in the future. It's good, worth it. Yeah. Okay, well, Kevin, it's been awesome having you on.
Amazing, thanks for having me.
Yeah, where can people find you?
So I'm usually on LinkedIn, so just Kevin J Wiles, and then Wiles is spelled Wils.
Not Willie.
And then just kevwiles.com. But if you're in the US, just don't search that name. Just go directly to the website.
Yeah, it's the first thing I'm doing after this podcast.
At least you're not in a public place.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin, thanks for coming on. It's been amazing.
Thanks so much. Speak to you guys soon.
Cheers, Kev.
And that wraps up this episode of Market Movers, Building Brands and Links with Linkify. Big thanks to our parent company, Linkify, the wizards behind turning ambitious businesses into standout brands. Hit up our website at linkify.io and take the first steps towards brand greatness. Big shout out to Fame for making this podcast possible. Thanks for listening, folks. Stick around for more insights in our next episode. Catch you later.